I'll call the May 1st, 2017 City Council regular meeting to order and ask those in the audience who'd like to join the council and myself in the Pledge of Allegiance to please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business this evening, I have two proclamations, one recognizing our correction officers and employees, and one recognizing Police Week. And so there's not a problem, and this is not a May Day demonstration, but hereby designed for something good. So the first proclamation recognizes our correction officers and employees, and proclamations typically begin with whereas, and whereas National Correction Officers and Employees Week in the city of Issaquah recognized employees of the jail for their role in safeguarding the citizens of Issaquah, providing safe, secure, and humane incarceration of offenders within their custody. And the second is celebrating Police Week, and here in the city of Issaquah, Issaquah recognizes the dedicated officers of the Issaquah Police Department who perform their duties with courage and professionalism, safeguarding the rights and freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution and protecting the lives of property of the community. And let me just say, we are blessed to have a superb group of folks in the Issaquah Police Department dedicating to keeping our community safe. And it's comforting to know that when a problem arises, they're there to respond quickly. And it is comforting to know that our jail, located in the basement of City Hall, I see a lot of people leaving the jail because they have a plastic bag in their hand. And when I do, I always ask them, how was it downstairs? And I have never had anyone tell me that they were treated with dignity and respect and held accountable. And that's a credit to your professionalism, and we're a safe city because of your professionalism. So one of the proclamations here is for, if I can get it open, our police officers, now therefore I, Fred Butler, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the week of May 14th through 2017 to be Police Week in the City of Issaquah, and encourage all citizens to recognize the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. In this whereof I hereunto set my hand and seal of the City of Issaquah this first day of May 2017. And so I am going to give this to Sergeant Rawlison. Thank you. And the second one is for our correction officers. And if I can get it open, Roger. Now, therefore, I, Fred Butler, Mayor of the City of Issaquah, do hereby proclaim the week of May 7th through 13th, 2017 to be Correction Officers and Employees Week in the City of Issaquah, and I encourage all citizens to pay tribute to the correctional employees of the jail for their vital service you provide. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and seal of the City of Issaquah this first day of May 2017. Thank you,
Mayor.
All for your service. Do you want to say something? You don't have to if you don't want to. I don't want to put you on the spot. Roger, do you have anything to say?
Not at this time, sir.
Okay, next year. And Sergeant Rolderson, do you have anything?
I think I spent my time in this microphone.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I appreciate everybody being here. We really appreciate the support. Thank you guys for all coming out. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next order of business is audience comments. Citizen comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on tonight's agenda items or other topics should do so at this time. Please direct your comments to the whole council and not to individuals. If it is not a question and answer period, and if you require a response, we will follow up if needed. And if you did not have an opportunity to include your email address on your sign-up sheet, please include that on the clipboard at the table in front of me. When recognized, use the lectern and speak into the microphone. State your name, address, and any relationship to the city. Limit your comments to 5 minutes. Submit any written comments to the city clerk. A visual timer has been placed on the lectern. When it turns yellow, you are within the last minute of your comment period. If you use the full 5 minutes, the timer will sound to indicate the end of your allotted comment period. Again, citizen comments, written and verbal, are an important aspect of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions that we make. And with that, I would ask, has anyone signed up to speak this evening?
Yes, Elizabeth Mapen.
Hello again. My name is Elizabeth Maupin. I live at 100 Big Bear Place in Issaquah, run a small bed and breakfast, serve on the Human Services Commission, and coordinate the Issaquah-Sammamish Interfaith Coalition. I'm here tonight, partly to give you a little bit of a history lesson. 161 years ago, Mother Joseph of the Sacred Heart and 4 companions came to Washington Territory. At that time, they found no hospitals, few schools, and very few services for those suffering from misfortunes on this frontier. These women stepped into the breach so strongly that, as word of their work spread, the Order of the Sisters of Providence grew to meet the many requests for their help. In 1859, they registered as a nonprofit corporation to provide, quote, relief of the needy and suffering humanity in the care of the orphans, invalids, and the sick and the poor, and in the education of youth. The whole Northwest has benefited from their labors. In 1961, they built a beautiful campus near the city of Issaquah to offer advanced learning opportunities to women in religious orders to further their ministry of service to the wider community. They built that campus to last for centuries. But things changed in the Roman Catholic Church. Fewer women became nuns, and eventually the Sisters of Providence sold the site. It has now come into the possession of Plateau Campus LLC, who do not seem to appreciate the cultural, historical, sacred, and educational treasure that they have in their possession. They wrote that there was no significance to demolishing this site. A great many of the citizens of Issaquah strongly disagree. And although comments from citizens and experts in the field of historic preservation were overwhelmingly in opposition to demolition. The city seems prepared to allow this complex of classrooms, spacious conference rooms, over 200 dorm rooms, a lot of bedrooms for faculty, kitchens, cafeterias, offices, a swimming pool, and an auto shop to be demolished prior to the time that the Issaquah School Board can exercise eminent domain to save them for the educational purposes that they were built to serve. This seems to me a terrible waste. I would ask you, when you meet next and are considering AB 7347, to think about expanding it beyond the Gilman City Hall. If the appeal of this determination of non-significance or mitigated non-significance is overturns things, or if the city decides to withdraw those determinations, that would give us some time to possibly find a really good use for these buildings. Don't let them be demolished, please, if there's any way you can do that. I'd tell you a lot of ways you could repurpose it, but I'm running out of time.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Bob Power,
Good evening. My name is Bob Power, 165 Northeast Juniper Street, Issaquah. You guys are probably tired of seeing me. I'm here to talk about the Three Trails crossing tonight. I don't remember which council person, when the moratorium first went into effect, used the verbiage of unintended consequences. And I think from our perspective, one of them has changed our perspective going forward. One of the things that's come out of the moratorium is that land values have gone up. And as a result of that, our original plan when we came in to speak to you about a partnering agreement, because we had lost our user for the front pad, has now changed a bit, and we actually have competing offers on the front pad. I wanted to preface that because tonight I don't think we're here to talk about the moratorium as it relates to Three Trails Crossing. I think we're here to talk about the choices that you all have. One of them is to go forward with the studio loft and the signal, and the other option, I think, as you know, is to not act or vote not to pass the development agreement, in which case we've been directed by our investment partners to proceed with the retail center, which is something we would prefer not to do. So we're here tonight asking you to support the development agreement because our choices are today to move forward with that or move forward with a retail center, which we would prefer not to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Janet Ewer,
Good evening. My name is Jana Ewer, and I'm here tonight to represent the Paul Lozier Grant and Charitable Foundation. They're at 60 and 90 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, more commonly known as the Issaquah Auto Stop. And I'm here tonight to ask for the council and the mayor's support in approving the traffic signal that's been proposed for the Three Trails crossing and the Gilman Lofts, to approve that development agreement. The alternative for us is, I think as everybody knows, is it will take away one of the entryways into Issaquah Auto Stop, limiting it to one entrance that comes from the eastbound only. And we really feel that'll be very devastating for our tenants who are there now. we also lost a business to them. It's already difficult. I think maybe, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so when they put the median in, it really changed things for us at that point as well. So we feel this will be really hard on our businesses that are there, our tenants. Also impact the trust. The trust is charitable, and it does grants, and it does just all kinds of stuff for Grant County. But over $1 million a year go to people's education, college education, and different things in Grant County, and there would be an impact to that as well. We're already seeing that as we try to renew some of our leases that are underway right now. So we really hope you'll look at that. You know, I don't know if there's other alternatives. I just know the C-curb really to us is a bad alternative, really bad alternative. So I hope you'll consider that, and I hope you will vote yes in favor of the development and the traffic signal. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
John Parkin.
Good evening. I'm John Parkin, also at 60 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, and with Sound Partners, I'm Jana's partner. We've been managing the Issaquah Auto Stop for, I don't know, probably collectively maybe up to 20 years, and love a lot of great businesses there. The tenants are local. Some of the business owners are local. Like Jana said, the trust, I think, has given close to $10 million in charitable endeavors over the past 15 years. We really don't want our income to be, impacted negatively by having no stoplight and installing potentially a C-curb there. It will cause our rents to go down. It may cause businesses to have to not renew their leases. So it's a serious thing, and we're hoping that at least support the stoplight that can go in there, and if not, at least not put in a C-curb that completely eliminates access for the tenants and the business owners. So just hope you'll consider that and appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, John.
Paul Omekonda.
Hello, how you doing? I'm here representing several hundred people in the Issaquah.
Paul?
Excuse me?
Just identify yourself and your address, please.
Sure thing. My name is Paul Omokonda. I hail from Rochester Hills, Michigan. I just recently moved out here about a year ago. And I want to be quick, but I want to be sure and let you know the seriousness of what I'm about to say. There are several hundred people living in the Issaquah Islands, and they've been gathering for a while. And there's a serious issue going on there with speeding. Across the street from me, a dog got hit several weeks ago. The person who hit this dog kept on driving. The following day, you can check this out in the Issaquah Reporter, a person wrote an opinion letter saying that he and his wife, who by the way is due in 5 weeks now, I volunteered to get her mail because we have prowlers, we have people who break into cars, and I was concerned for her. The following day after the dog got hit, they said in the newspaper there was blood still in the street as we took our morning walk. Here's what brings me here today. My son, Philip Michael. I don't know what anything about pregnancies, but I like to get myself educated. So when I found out that my wife was pregnant, we were already 16 weeks in. I went and got a sign language book after reading a book. I've read 5 books by now, including What to Expect When You're Expecting. In this folder, which I opened up for my unborn son, there is a section called Media now, because his name has been in the newspaper. This Friday, it'll be the 3rd time that I work with Nicole Jennings on the speeding issue in the Issaquah Highlands. I have a copy for you, Mr. Mayor, that I would love to give you of the newspaper article. After we've been gathering for several months, I decided that, you know what, I have a small idea. The last time I got a small idea It was backed by Dr. Jones, who happened to be the attorney of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My uncle is a federal senator. My grandfather, after whom I'm named, was the right-hand man to the Minister of Finance for the DRC. I come from a bloodline of people that get stuff done when they turn their gaze on it. And my point to you is that I came here all the way from where I was. And by the way, Rochester Hills is considered in the movie Rolling to Columbine as one of the richest counties in America. And when my wife forced me to move here, because I was very content where I was, I said, we must match the quality of life that I had. Here in Issaquah, you have people like myself who are used to a certain amount of safety, who are used to getting things, if you will, done in a certain manner. And now we have prowlers. I have to worry about my pregnant wife going out at night. I have to worry about cars speeding at all hours of the day and night. I myself have had to dive in between vehicles at night. The people above me have had to, let's say, skirt out of the way of a moving, passing vehicle on 25th Avenue as well. And I'm here to say that it's time for something more permanent to be done, besides assigning 2 police officers 150 hours of their time. I don't want to throw power and names around, but if we don't get something more permanent done, I'm going to get cameras here every meeting outside asking you questions. I'm going to make phone calls to my people in Washington and use my last name to make sure that my son, who is born in 3.5 months from now, is not going to have to worry about whether his dad has life insurance or not. My wife won't have to ask me to be outside when she gets home from work in Bellevue around 6 o'clock or such. And we elect you great people to lead this community. And here's a small anecdote of how I view life in my life here, at least in Issaquah, but generally speaking. You assess a man by the quality and status of things that surround him, the closest thing to him. You want to check me out? You need to find out what's going on with my wife in the area where I live. And I am embarrassed to tell you that folks are thinking about moving out of the Issaquah Islands. I came from a long ways from here. And I was told, and I read about it, that this was a serene, peaceful, beautiful community. And I believe it is worth the time when hundreds of people are getting together, they are peed off. I will stop in 1 second here. And I believe it appropriate, sir, Mr. Butler, Mr. Mayor, and Mrs. Goodman, whom I saw in the newspaper was running for office again, to ask you for a more permanent solution. We need more police presence
Sir,
in
your
those long
comment period
streets.
is over. I'm
Okay?
sorry.
Please
Thank you very
summarize,
much.
Paul.
Yes, what I'm asking for is a permanent solution to the safety issue going on in Issaquah Islands. We need more police presence to let people know that the culture shift is happening. And that includes, Madam Goodman, something on your agenda to get some
Paul,
speed bumps in the area. Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Susan Neville.
Hello, I'm Susan Neville, and I live at 2825 Northwest Pinecone Drive. I've been a 21-year resident of Issaquah on Newport Way, and I actually stood here at the last City Council meeting outlining the importance of the upcoming Bergsma Windward Development Commission meeting, which was on April 19th. And today I'm here to summarize that meeting. Normally I would put it in an email, but I thought I'd speak before you because it was a pretty distinguishable meeting. We had between 60 and 70 residents in attendance. It was a 5-hour meeting. We had 32 public comments speaking in opposition against the connector road and the variance cluster. The residents gave very informative and thoughtful comments, and in many cases, evidence to back up their claims. Excuse me. Some of the topics, which we've talked about before, but really probably need repeating, were inconclusive traffic studies and low estimation of traffic from Tallis to Newport Way, the addition of 4,000 additional trips just in that corridor alone, without including Talus as a shortcut. Safety was a very big issue, and particularly in North Talus neighborhoods. They were not designed or used as thoroughways for traffic. The removal of 80,000 cubic yards, or in other terms, 8,000 dump trucks of dirt from the side of the mountain. Stripping Cougar Mountain, hillsides, including old-growth forest. Short and long-term cost to taxpayers was brought up by a few people. These were due to the steep slope utilities, mudslides, diverted streams. These are all possibilities that could happen in the future. The Issaquah Comprehensive Plan is not being considered, which was put into place to protect our trees, our canopies, and limit the size of the units of the development. These were just maybe 8 topics of the 32 discussed. After much deliberation concerning the Talus to Newport Thoroughway, which was the very hot topic of the evening, the DC committee unanimously voted no. They instead recommended an emergency-only road joining Talus to the Bergsma property. The other issue was the clustering variance. And you, the city council, will have to decide after viewing the video if an ample amount of time was spent on this cluster portion of the agreement. There seemed to be some confusion on the commissioner's part. It could be maybe due to the lateness of the hour. They didn't start that segment till 9:30. Or just the amount of information involved. However, the DC did vote to recommend the cluster variance by 3-1. So I just encourage you, as you study the various reports, the numerous variances and the recommendations, ask yourself if this is the right decision or use for this particular land. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Julie Clark.
My name is Julie Clark. I live at 915 Bear Ridge Court. To date, I have collected more than 110 signatures from Talus residents opposing the connector road between Talus and Newport Way via Bergsma. It may be surprising to some of you that so many people do not want what the city thinks we want. That got me thinking, what other things is the city asking for as part of the development agreement for Bergsma? A small segment of sidewalk along Newport Way, which won't connect to another sidewalk, 12 acres of land to be included in the city or county parklands, wetlands mitigated to yet another part of the city, more steep and windy roads. What is the cost of this shopping list? The Bergsma development comes with a very expensive price tag. Adding roads and unwanted traffic to our quiet and safe neighborhoods, clearing our hillsides of the trees that support our clean air, digging out 88,000 cubic yards of soil off an unstable hillside. I'm not a geotech engineer, but I have seen the effects of clearing land on saturated slopes. Even the geotech engineers are unable to say with accuracy what will happen once vegetation is removed and the top layers of soil are removed. And the noise. Construction trucks using compression brakes as they haul equipment and soil down the steep slopes from early morning until late at night. The construction trucks needed to use compression brakes in Talus while preparing parcels 7, 8, and 9 in 2014 and 15. So I would expect nothing different on this particular slope. During the past 2 weeks, I have heard of homes condemned due to landslides just below the Bergsma property. I learned about an earlier slide that occurred in the late 1980s On relatively flat ground, where only 30,000 cubic yards of soil were removed, while a 2 million gallon water reservoir was being built by the city of Issaquah. The West Side Reservoir is right next to the Bergsma property. If that parcel of land had streams below the surface of the soil and was unstable, it seems foolish to believe the adjacent land, just because it has a different owner, would be any different. This is an expensive proposition that our community does not want and cannot afford. The lower northeast segment of Cougar Mountain is populated with streams and the soil is frequently saturated. Please do not allow the building of clustered homes on the Bergsma property. Do not create a shopping list of items for projects we do not want. We cannot take care of what we currently have, so please do not add to the list of problems needing to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Steve Pereira.
Hi, Steve Pereira, 170 Northeast Dogwood Street for about 9.5 years. Before I get started, I have a brief presentation. I may need to count on our talented Assistant City Clerk to lend me a hand, Tisha Geiser. I also sent her an email with the link if you can forward that to the others as well when you get a chance to go with the presentation. While she's setting that up, I also wanted to speak out against the Bergsma property. I'd be okay if one of you wanted to strike it from the consent calendar. That may be processed to keep it in there. Yes, please. But I just am concerned with the removal of vegetation with 34%, thank you, with 34% of the property being removed. City code or city documentation talks about maintaining tree canopy of 50%. This, and we're already at 48%. This removes 34% of the coverage from that property. So that's just a brief comment on that. So my other topic was the preservation of the Providence Heights Chapel and campus. This is my feedback. Yes, I can. So this was from my reading of what I understand the SEPA code is. I may have gotten the wrong document. I also didn't go back and cross-reference all of the RCWs and other state codes, so it's my layman attempt to understand that. On the committee of the whole on April 25th, there were some presentations for AB 7347. The presentation does include the Providence Heights campus as in the it presents the campus as an Appendix B, but that's the only reference to the document. This isn't flowing as well as I would like, so I'm just going to reference that it's only a reference to Appendix B in the document. Itself, in the SEPA document, I read three things, and again, the lead agency I understand is Issaquah. I've highlighted the parts that I think are relevant in yellow. The responsible officials should be identified within the SEPA documentation. It can be a planning director, it can be the mayor, or it can be a group such as environmental committee or the city council. The second is once an appeal is made, it can't then go back to the local legislative body for appeal. So I think there's a chance or an opportunity here to, when there's a pending or proposed legislation that would demolish an existing structure that has artistic, cultural, or historic preservation landmarks, that there be a different body than the city staff that make that determination, whether that's city council, whether it's an arts commission, someone else, or the city council. And the third is that the existing documentation does allow the existing policy to remand or remove a mitigated determination of non-significance based on the fact that there was this April 25th meeting where there seemed to be a significant recognition that the site does have historical facts and determination. The city can administratively decide to remove that MDNS and let the process for historic preservation go forward. I, along with others, would like to see maybe some repurpose of the campus for affordable housing initiative, which the city is looking at. And again, I'm sure Tisha will go ahead and forward that to the rest of you for review. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
No one further has signed up to speak.
Is there anyone else who has not signed up desiring to speak? Yes, sir.
I need some enlightenment on that's the city of Issaquah there on that map.
That is, and if you would approach the microphone.
I just wanted to know if you could point to me where the Bergsma property is.
No, this is an opportunity for audience comments. This is not a study session, so.
This is a study. I'm referring to the comments made.
This is not a conversation, sir. If you would like to. Is there anyone else who has not signed up desiring to speak? Yes, sir, Ken. Please identify yourself.
David Mitchell. Is the
and
mic
your
on?
address.
Can you hear me? David Mitchell. I live on 900 Idlewood Drive. Lived here 41 years. I have to profess my ignorance. I hear a lot and I read a lot about the Bergsma property, and several people have spoken on it tonight. I'm just trying to get educated. That's why I came to the meeting tonight, but I don't know where the Bergsma property is. Could somebody just put their finger on it for me on that map?
Yes, sir. And Ken?
Got it. That's all I wanted to know.
You'll walk out of here a wiser man.
Ken Eastman, I reside at 2473 Northwest Stony Creek Drive. I wanted to make a couple of comments about development. I echo the sentiments of my neighbors who talked about the Bergsma hearing and some of the objections of the community. I would ask that you take those comments seriously. I agree with all of them. I'm personally an objection to Bergsma for two very large reasons. One is, once again, we seem to be embarking on the folly of building on steep slopes. And according to the Issaquah Press archives, we've tried that 9 times in the last 30 years and had 9 landslides. So we don't have such a great track record, and it appears to me all the smartest minds that understand geology don't seem to understand geology when it comes to steep slopes and building on them. And all too often, it's the city that ends up having to bail these failed projects out. And we know that from personal experience in Tallis. The other objection I've got is there's no way that you're going to eliminate the impact of trucking 88,000 cubic yards of fill off of that Bergsma property, going through the city of Issaquah and impacting our residents. So I think this is a bad idea. My second comment about Bergsma is the development agreement. That was the topic of the Development Commission session several days ago. And what we learned there is that the development agreement for Bergsma is one of several ways that that property might be handled. But yet there was only one option discussed there, and that was the development agreement. So I would just ask City Council and Land and Shore members, explore all the options, get all the facts. And if you don't have all the facts, then push it back and ask for the facts. There's no rush here. If you cut those trees down and if you bulldoze that property, there's no putting it back. And we know that from our experience in Parcel 9. You can't put the hill back after you do that, so get it right. My main concern is that we may be enabling development that might not happen ordinarily through this development agreement. So please, be careful, be thoughtful, get the facts before you even tackle the development agreement. And resist the urge to jump in there with your red pen and make it better. I'm sure you could, but maybe it's just not right to begin with. My third comment is about the active projects in the city. 22 pages on the Issaquah website. That's a lot of projects. And I look at the level of care on the projects that I'm familiar with in my neighborhood, and it just seems to me like city staff is stretched really, really thin. And I work with these people occasionally. They're good people, but they're over their skis in terms of the workload that's on their plate. And we're considering yet another complex project in Bergsma. Let's finish what we've already started. I mean, we've got parcel 7 and 8 there, 3 years, not one house is built. We've got Forest Heights has been in process for 2 years. We have the hillside, and we have a pump station that was started almost a year ago. It's still not finished. I mean, let's finish what we start before we put anything more on these people's plate. So I would just ask that. And then the last comment I have is just the expense of development. We're told that development pays for itself, that the developer's fees pay for all the city staff that's involved in vetting a project and getting it through from cradle to grave, from the beginning to the very end. But have you ever seen the accounting for that? Do you really believe on a project-by-project basis that what we collect from the developers and what the city staff expends in time, in terms of resource, dollarized, really balance out? If you've seen those numbers, if you believe them, then that's all well and good. But if you don't know that for sure, I would just ask that you ask the question, how much does this really cost us? Because at the end of the day, what doesn't get paid by the developer gets paid by the taxpayers. And then just a closing comment. I wish all good wishes for the upcoming election. And please pay attention to what you hear in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Your timing was perfect. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. Can you hear me? My name is Susan Hass, and I live at 19524 Southeast 24th Place in Sammamish. That's not in Issaquah, but I do live near the Providence Heights place, special place, and I also live in the Issaquah School District. So I am interested in telling you that in what I have heard is I really appreciate lots of faiths around the world, but what I've heard in Christianity is that the one thing angels say to people is fear not. And I really feel that that's important right now. I've had to think of that for the past few weeks, and I know other people have too. And the city council has a great opportunity for public service to demonstrate that. You can give support to the staff of the city of Issaquah and help them do the right thing with Providence Heights. You can help do the right thing. There is so much community support out there for preservation of this entire campus and this site, not just the windows, not just the chapel, but actually the whole thing. There are citizens who have, mobilized in very random and mysterious ways, met each other and are talking and sharing information and generating things that they would be delighted to share with all of you and funnel into this public process. And I say fear not because the city of Issaquah has the legal ability, according to the State Department of Ecology, to withdraw the proposed determination of non-significance and the mitigated determination of non-significance. As a secondary, less attractive option, the city has the ability to give a public comment period for the final mitigated determination of non-significance. And if that were to be the case, there wouldn't need to be this appeal process right now, and it could stay more local, and it could stay more with you all, the public servants, the planning staff, all these great people who are the most familiar with this community and with the site. And I guess I'm saying fear not, because I understand that if the city said, you know what, we need more time, this is like uncovering an arrowhead or indigenous bones at this place. We issued this determination, and 105 public comments came into City Hall, which are viewable by any of you. It's in a paper file at the Development Services Department. 3 of those were opposed. No, 3 of those were opposed to preservation. 3 of those, actually, they weren't opposed to preservation. They were in favor of the demolition out of 105 comments. And those 3 people also said, I want the windows preserved. Whether that is even like financially or physically feasible is totally unclear. There are other issues that I think were uncovered, like indigenous arrowheads near water, such as, is this place owned by a church, or is this place owned by Plateau Campus LLC that has potentially no connection to City Church? What is the case law in Washington State? What is the legal backing that the City Council has and the City of Issaquah planning staff for preservation under whatever the facts really are? And it seems to me that there's time that's needed to really understand this. And I think it really is worth exploring. And I'm speaking especially to James Haney as the city attorney. I understand your job. You're trying to protect the city. That's really important. And Robert Harrison, the city administrator, and the city council, I totally understand. I just want to say, fear not, just think of truth prevailing, and whatever happens, happens, but let's get this out in the open and ventilated in a really, truly public process. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else desiring to speak this evening? Kathy.
Good evening. I have 2 things to speak of this evening, and one just briefly. I'd like to acknowledge that this is Small Business Week, and we know that small businesses are truly the backbone of our community, and we just, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, want to acknowledge that and thank all of the wonderful business owners that choose to do business in Issaquah. It makes it truly enjoyable for all of us. And I am here again tonight to speak on behalf of the Board of Directors and to share their message with the City Council. The Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce thanks the City and the City Council for all you do. As a pro-business advocate for economic vitality in the region, the Chamber supports business opportunities that meet the vision of the Central Issaquah Plan and enhance the economic vitality of our community. We support projects that improve mobility, enhance the look and feel of our business districts, and bring in goods and service that add value to our region in terms of job growth and higher paying wages. On the agenda this evening is once again the Gilman Loft project. At the request of some of our members, we have been asking surrounding businesses, city staff, and council members about the project. Businesses agree that this intersection is a problem and requires a solution that will enhance pedestrian safety while moving traffic through the system as smoothly as possible. It appears that many of the surrounding businesses are in favor of the intersection improvements, and that all indications are that the proposed signal provides a preferred solution. We would like to point out that the project will also provide much-needed office space, create opportunity for business growth, and better paying jobs. In addition, we also ask for a swift completion to the work being done on the moratorium. We don't want to miss any opportunity to attract businesses and jobs to our community during this time of significant business growth in the region. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the Chamber of Commerce and all the businesses we represent, thank you again for your commitment to our future. Respectfully, the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else desiring to speak this evening? David?
Good evening, David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. Certainly supportive of the Three Trails agreement that you have tonight, and the emphasis by the council to the Development Commission about studying the interface with the trail and the plaza and that kind of thing, so that's good. Lake Tradition, glad to see that maybe we'll get a paving job done up there. That soils underneath that road is pretty suspect. And I think when we get into that, we really need to make sure we don't understand the soils under there and end up having a failed road in months, years, or whatever. And if it means some extra money or something doesn't get fully paved because we deal with the road to make sure it just doesn't turn to asphalt potholes instead of gravel potholes, it'll be worth it. Good to hear that there's going to be some signage money. On the day before Earth Day, I was up at the working on invasive plants up there for 5 hours, and I couldn't believe how many people were parking down by I-90 and walking up the road. Some because they didn't know what they were doing, and some forgot their passes or didn't have passes. But there is an alternative trail there. It needs to be signed well and get people not on this walking on this road because the speeds are going to dramatically change. Speaking of speeds, Talus and the Highlands have been very vocal about speed issues. It came up constantly in the Bergsma night and has got a lot of people against the connection of the road just because they are so fearful of the speeds that they are already seeing, and it's a very legitimate concern. Not to suggest that he should connect the road. One fault I felt in the Bergsma situation the other night was the first part was about connecting whether we connect the road or not. And then it was a separate meeting, a separate topic, whether we do a development agreement and what are the terms of that development agreement, or we do a conventional plat. There was no information offered about a conventional plat. If it were a conventional plat and not a development agreement, how many homes would we have? What are the impacts? We had no idea. It wasn't really discussed at all. And I'm generally quite a fan of development agreements, and I think they do a lot of good things. But still, there was never that comparison made, and I don't think the Development Commission had the information they should have had. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else desiring to speak this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to leave your copy. I have to take off.
You can drop that off with the clerk. Anyone else desiring to speak?
Can I get to walk over?
Yeah. Anyone else?
Take a copy. We need speed bumps. We need police presence in the highways. I will be back again.
Anyone else in the audience desiring to speak this evening? Seeing no one then, audience comments are closed, and I would like to thank everyone who has spoken this evening for you giving of your time to come and share your views with the council. With that, we'll now move to committee and regional reports, beginning with Councilmember Batiste.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last week, I attended the King County Conservation District board meeting, and we basically discussed at length, there was an urban forestry work group that the board recommended to move forward with their proposed work plan, and this plan focuses on tree canopy assessments. Looking at this from the Sound Cities Association's overview, the decision was made to focus on tree canopy assessments in South King County cities. This was based on doing a lot of detailed work and looking at maps on where this has been done within King County, and there's very little that's been done within South King County cities. And I just wanted to point out that this is only for this year. So it's a work plan only for this year to encourage that within South King County cities, and then they'll be working on other areas. There was also an update on King County's partnership with the wastewater treatment plant, and then some information and overviews of some absolutely amazing community gardens that are going in all over King County. So that was a lot of fun. Also, the East Side Human Services Forum board will meet May 17th at Bellevue City Hall, and that concludes my report. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ramos.
Thank you. The Infrastructure Committee met on the 20th of April, excuse me, and we had 4 items on our agenda. First one was South Cove pressure reducing valve, and that's on the agenda tonight, so we'll talk more about that later. The second one and third one kind of came together a little bit. I asked to talk about sidewalks and sidewalk codes, rolling into complete streets and some of the things we're working on that. And so an interesting thing came up was the sidewalk codes that exist now are from 1964. And there's been some case law that has shown those to probably not be what would be effective nowadays. So in that discussion, what I'm hoping is we can work on next year is maybe we can get on our agenda to try to update our sidewalk codes as part of next year's work plan, so we can have a consistent system that we can work on. And that came a lot from complete streets, like which streets we're working on, whose sidewalks are we doing, who has the responsibility, the landowner, the city, et cetera. So that's where hopefully we can get that cleared up next year. And we'll continue also working on the complete streets policy and criteria that we started. You've seen some of it in some of our committee meetings of the whole. We'll continue working on that to get a final policy back to the council hopefully soon. Just want to share one comment, audience comment while we're there. It was one of the because it's been a discussion a few places. Old Town is has been spelled with an E, and currently a number of folks wanted to drop the E. One of the audience comments was they came and looked at the definition of old versus old with an E, and they said old without the E is just old and not really flattering at all. But when you have the E on it, it means quaint, cute, those kinds of things, and they really suggested we keep the E. Just want to bring that up.
Well, Bill, thank you for educating us.
I'm just passing the word along. All right. And then the last time was we worked on the regional agenda, which is also coming back here. Other committees were working on that as well. On the 19th, I attended the Regional Transit Committee meeting, and I talked a little bit about this last time. I also talked about leadership, that they have their new plan. Metro is a one center city plan that is being developed because of all the changes coming to downtown Seattle and the concern of congestion that's already very serious with buses trying to get through downtown. And I'm concerned, the SCA caucus is concerned, RTC, we may bring that to SCA as a whole to maybe take a policy position on that. What I encourage is that I'd like to talk to also leadership to have Metro come and talk to us and give us a briefing on one center city plan, because I think it's not really to the benefit of the east side as much as it is to getting buses through downtown Seattle. And the main thing would probably be that a lot of buses that people can get a one-seat ride into Seattle and places like that now will probably turn into a two-seat ride of having to transfer, because the buses won't be going through downtown. You're going to have to transfer to get somewhere in downtown. So that's not beneficial to us. So I'll follow up with that and with you and Bob and see if we can get that on the agenda. If the council would like to have that. And there will be a follow-up meeting I'm going to go to on the 5th with that, and I think you're going to go too also, Mayor. Today, I went to my first meeting of the Equity and Social Justice Committee tied to King Conservation District. The brand new committee just starting. We'll be looking at equity and social justice issues on how the King Conservation District is having their programs as well as their internal workings. So equity and social justice is high on the King County agenda, and so they've taken this as everything they do has to be looked at through an equity and social justice eye. So I'll be leading that and say it's a new committee, and we just had our first meeting, just getting to start to lay the groundwork. I'll have more to report on that as we go on. On the 10th of May coming up, my Emergency Management Advisory Committee will be meeting, and we'll follow up on the grants and what proposals are going to be funded with the grants under emergency management coming from the federal government. And then on the 11th, the Eastside Fire and Rescue Committee meeting, I'll be attending as well. Neither of those have agendas yet. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Winterstein.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only report is regarding the Puget Sound Regional Council's Growth Management Policy Board. Our next meeting is this Thursday, May 4th at 9:30 at PSRC headquarters in downtown Seattle. Note that start time is 30 minutes earlier than usual. The key item on the agenda, there will be no action taken, but we will have a work session type discussion about the alternatives being proposed for the regional centers framework, the alternatives to the tiered system that was recommended by the working committee. They recommended potentially creating a tiered system of regional centers. There's been a lot of discussion about that, and a lot of alternative ideas put forward. My intent is to summarize, is to go through this conversation and to get summary and bring more, because no action is being taken, and it'll happen in the future. I'll bring the key points of that discussion back to this council so that we can talk about it, and I can get all of your input regarding our interest in the direction that the tiered system goes. That is my only report this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Martz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Council Services and Safety Committee will be meeting next Tuesday, May 9th at 6:30 p.m. Here in council chambers. The agenda is still TBD. Sound Cities Association is then meeting the next night, Wednesday, May 10th at 7 p.m. in Renton City Hall. We have a number of items. There's only one action item, and it is appointments, which are usually non-controversial. And then we have a number of topics for discussion that I will potentially be coming back to report to you fine folks here, including regional affordable housing strategy, and then two fundraising things that are both potentially on the ballot this fall. The renewal or expansion of the Veteran and Human Services Levy, which my understanding is there's some question right now about whether it's just going to be renewed or whether it's going to be expanded. And then the Cultural Access Sales Tax, which my understanding was there was some discussion on today, so it's still an ongoing concern, and seeing how both of these two funding requests look to shape up this fall is an issue that I think all electeds in King County will have a strong interest in. Then GMPC, Growth Management Planning Council, is Wednesday, May 31st, and the Regional E911 Strategic Plan Scoping Leadership Group will next meet Thursday, June 20th. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber.
No report this evening.
Councilmember Pauley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Friday, April 21st, I attended the Chamber Board meeting, and we had some updates from City Manager and my City Administrator and myself on the moratorium, and in particular, also some road closures around town, both long-term and short-term. I attended the Eastside Fire and Rescue Finance and Administration Committee meeting on April 26th. At headquarters, we had two items on our agenda. We discussed fire chief performance evaluation and compensation. This topic came back up after we had reworked the fire chief's performance evaluation review process this year. Decided we needed to have a second conversation about how to link that through compensation. So this is a work item that's going to stay there for a while as the committee reviews input from its different partner organizations. The second thing was a discussion of the Capitals Facilities Maintenance Fund. This conversation will go on over several meetings. It's a pulling together of all of the old policies and procedures related to how we do this planning and taking a new look at them and putting them together in a more understandable manner. So this work item will also be coming back with some policy questions that they'll be looking for direction from our city at some point in time. And the Cascade Water Alliance Board meeting in Bellevue, I attended that last week. missing the date, but I'm sure the mayor will talk about it in his report. That's all.
Council President Goodman.
Thank you. Land and Shore Committee meets this Thursday, May 4th, 6:30 p.m. here in council chambers. On the agenda, our standing item currently, moratorium update. We also will be discussing Agenda Bill 7215, the ninth major amendment to the Issaquah Highlands Two-Party Development Agreement, the Polycon proposal. Agenda Bill 7417 will be next. That's the companion First Amendment to the WashDOT Development Agreement, which has to do with Park Point. It all relates to the Polygon proposal. Also on the agenda, Agenda Bill 7110, Windward/Bergsma Development Agreement, which we heard a little bit about tonight. I would like to let the public and fellow council members know that the Bergsma Development Agreement will take at least 2 meetings. We discussed that at Pre-Land and Shore. The plan is to, or my intent as the chair, is to have there be a presentation and an opportunity for questions from the committee members and then comments from the public, and then come back at the meeting in June and hear answers to our questions and have more discussion, and if it's appropriate at that time, take action. If we're not ready, then we're not ready. But I just want everybody to know that this is not going to be a one-meeting discussion. Agenda Bill 7316, Sustainable Build and Action Strategy. We also will be discussing, next on the agenda, vertical mixed use analysis. That will be for discussion. And then also for discussion is the end of certain development agreements, because they are nearing the end of their contract lifespan. That would be Issaquah Highlands and Talus. And that concludes my report.
Thank you for the mayor's report. There will not be an executive session this evening. On April the 29th, I was pleased to attend a CERT recognition and graduation ceremony for our newest community emergency response team members. We're fortunate to live in a community that values disaster preparedness, where more than 600 of our neighbors have completed CERT training and are ready to lend a hand during emergencies. I'm pleased to share with you that the state's 2017 to 2019 proposed transportation budget accelerates the timeline for much-needed upgrades to the I-90 SR-18 interchange, as well as $1.5 million for improvements at SR-900/12th Avenue here in Issaquah. Also, WashDOT was directed to look at the advisability of a roundabout at SR-900 and Maple Valley Road, which might take some pressure off of the Issaquah-Hobart Road. As part of the city's development moratorium work plan, our department services team is hosting 2 community meetings about Central Issaquah District visions. First is 5:30 to 7 p.m., May 10th at the Atlas Apartments, and the second is 5:30 to 7 p.m., May 17th at Pickering Barn. Please join us to share your vision for Central Issaquah. We're working with WashDOT to prepare for the upcoming Peak Shoulder Lane project along Interstate 90 from Issaquah to Eastgate. As part of the public outreach, our agencies are planning to hold a community meeting next month. More information will be available on the city's website, issaquahwa.gov. And on April 21st, I attended a Sound Transit Board of Directors Transit-Oriented Development Workshop to explore Sound Transit's TOD work program in light of the new state statutes and the ST3 plan. And the Cascade Water Alliance board meeting was held on April the 26th. Council member Polly and myself attended that meeting, and we approved a number of routine contracts and amended the 2017 budget by increasing the 2017 to 2023 CIP by $275,000. We also received a staff presentation about Cascades Earthquake Resilience Workshop, which is scheduled for June the 6th, 2017 in Bellevue. And that concludes the mayor's report. Moving now to the consent calendar, I'd ask if the accounts payable and payroll for May the 1st, 2017 have been reviewed.
They have.
Thank you. I would now ask the city clerk to read the consent calendar into the record.
The consent calendar was distributed to council in advance for study. If authorized, council action will occur by single motion regarding the following items. Item A seeks approval of the accounts payables and payroll of May 1st. Items B and C seeks approval of the minutes of the work session of April 10th and the regular meeting of April 17th. Item D, AB 7110 Windward Bergsma Development Agreement, seeks referral to the Council Land and Shore Committee. Item E, AB 7313 Capital Improvement Plan 2018 through 2022, seeks referral to Council Committee work session and the regular meeting of June 5th for a public hearing. Item F, AB 7316 Sustainable Building Action Strategy, seeks referral to the Council Land and Shore Committee. Item G, AB 7338 2017 Water Main Rehabilitation Project, seeks to award bid. Item H, AB 7341 King County Animal Services Interlocal Agreement, seeks authorization. Item I, AB 7346 Interagency Agreement with Mountains to Sound, Tradition Lake, seeks authorization. Item J, AB 7413 Eastside Fire and Rescue Interlocal Agreement, seeks referral to Council Services and Safety Committee. Item K, AB 7417 First Amendment to WashDOT Development Agreement and Development Agreement with Polygon Northwest, seeks referral to the Council Land and Shore Committee. This concludes the reading.
Thank you. Does any council member desire to remove any item from consent calendar for separate consideration? Council President Goodman?
I move to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving now to regular business. The first item under regular business is Agenda Bill 7072, Central Park Pad 1 construction. And to provide an update on that project is the Director of Parks and Recreation, Jeff Watling. And that, you got it up there.
Whoa, yes. Mayor, thank you. Good evening, council. Sorry, all choked up. This item is on the agenda tonight as a referral to Services and Safety next Tuesday, the 9th. Given the discussions, though, that we had last December during the budget, the complexities of this project and the bids, we wanted to provide you a quick overview and a little bit of a review of the work. And now that we've opened bids, sort of refresh what our discussion was last December and how we're preparing to have this discussion next Tuesday. Potential award of this bid later in May would allow for completion of this 2013 park bond project. The project addresses current and future athletic field capacity needs by converting the existing grass baseball field into lighted multi-use synthetic turf. The estimated annual hours of available use will increase fourfold. From about 500 hours a year to a little over, conservatively speaking, a little over 2,000 hours a year. That's just one example of a really good return on the investment. Some disappointing news, though, that I'll highlight in this is as we open bids, those bids came in higher than our estimates. This is not unlike what other East Side cities and King County cities are certainly experiencing. When we last met, when we had this discussion in December, if you recall, even then, as we were looking at how to accomplish and really balance accomplishing the park bond commitment, but certainly doing it in a fiscally responsible way. Consensus was reached through our discussions that we would phase this Pad 1 project. And you recall a bulk of that phasing strategy was to take advantage of existing parking, existing paved areas to create parking rather than doing full build out of the parking lot. Allow that to happen when Pad 4 is done. In that consensus, we agreed to proceed with final design and permitting, which we have been doing through this first quarter. Also, there was consensus reached to create some bid alternatives to some of the key elements of this project, to again give ourselves some flexibility. If you remember, and I'll go through the list here on the next slide, what some of those bid alternates were. Certainly some priority commitments, but again, flexibility is an important approach to this. We also, in that discussion, had the conversation and the acknowledgement that additional funding would likely be needed, but rather than trying to identify what that is based on cost estimate, we agreed to proceed with bid award so we could have that discussion and look at those bid alternates with real numbers, with actual bid numbers as our information. Just to highlight a little bit the layout of the bid, the layout of the project itself. The base project really is a bulk of this work. And if you remember from our discussion in December, we looked at our existing revenues and asked ourselves that question: what could we get done with existing revenues that we had? That really made up and comprised what we were hoping would be the base of this project. That base really included the athletic field itself, the conversion, the new synthetic turf, and the lighting. It also included some work that we would need to do for the interim parking spaces. I'll note on this, you'll see in parentheses with a couple of these that say KCDA. Another strategy that we took as we proceeded with this project and design is we have been a member of a co-op, KCDA, for a number of decades. KCDA goes out and on behalf of cities and school districts bids out materials. They've done a bid process for synthetic turf as well as athletic field lighting. So as a way and a means of buying direct and saving ourselves some money, we're purchasing the turf from KCDA. As well, through KCDA, you'll see as a base bid, we had the metal halide lights, where the sort of the traditional historical technology through KCDA. We've also, through KCDA, gotten a price for those LED lights as we're looking at the options. Once we had the base bid in place, we created what ended up being 4 alternatives. You'll see option 1 there is the LED lights. That's not a bid alternate, but it will, as our discussions ensue with you and with services and safety, that'll really be the first option we look at. But it'll really be, rather than a bid alternate, choosing which invoice we want to go with the KCDA purchase. The other alternates really started to fall in place from our discussion in December. The road safety improvements, this is the discussion we had on Central Park Lane. We have some parking spaces that are really functionally not working well, and so this would expand those parking spaces by 2 feet to add much more functionality and really address a historical challenging issue there at the park. The other alternatives, as we discussed, the picnic shelter, we separated as an alt. We then took amenities, some of the amenities, and separated those into what we felt were 2 relatively logical alternatives to, again, give ourselves some flexibility as we receive bids and have a discussion on scope of this project. So we opened bids last Wednesday, the 26th. 2 bids were received. Unfortunately, the apparent low bid, not by a lot, but the apparent low bid had a calculation error and ended up withdrawing their bid due to that calculation error on their final bid sheet. Looking comparatively, though, at those 2 bids, to put that calculation incorrectly, to look at it, they were within about less than 5% of each other. A $2.77 million bid and a $2.64 million bid. As I said earlier, unfortunately, these numbers are above our estimate. We're in process as we did this on Wednesday, of continuing to analyze why that is. It appears that a bulk of these increased costs are within the base bid. But again, we'll know more as we're working with the designer on this. In the end, looking at rough order of magnitude, in December, if you recall, we were looking at these bid alternates needing to be likely in the range of about $415,000 of additional funding we would need to identify. These bids represent about a $800,000 increase from that. So we're going to need to have some very critical conversation as we go into services and safety next week. Real quickly with schedule, here we are tonight. Services and safety on Tuesday. Pending that discussion, we're scheduled now to come back to you on the 15th for potential award or continued discussion. As we looked at framing what these options are and really trying to set some of these policy questions for services and safety, our approach will be looking at really 3 buckets of options. The first one would be, what would it look like to reject these bids and rebid? What is the climate like? Is that advantageous to us or not? Looking at the pros, cons, and trade-offs of that. That second bucket, looking at awarding the bid, really takes various forms. And as we're working on the staff memo and work through the discussion next Tuesday, we'll look through what it would look like to award the base in any variety of all or portion of those bid alternates and what that does and what the pros and cons are for that. Another option that we'll explore from a pro-con standpoint is what would it look like to reject the bids and rebid at a future date? What might that gain us? What might not that gain us? What risks are involved there? So that really is an overview. I think in closing, I would just add a contextual piece a little bit. As we're looking ahead, it's pretty clear in our work these last couple of months and this first part of the year, as we wrap up Confluence Park Phase 2 here in the coming weeks, as we are preparing this bid discussion for Central Park. These are the last 2 remaining 2013 park bond topics. So they've really been a lot of our focus this last year. While we're doing this work, though, excited to say that the Park Strategic Plan effort continues to unfold. We've wrapped up the Listen and Learn session, and I just say that in context that that's going to certainly help us identify and prioritize what the next set of investments throughout the entire parks, trails, and open space system will look like, and help position us for really what will become a cycle of site-specific capital projects and also looking into the future on what this next series of investments will be throughout our park system. So with that, questions?
Are there questions? Councilmember Martz.
So I think that in terms of this coming back to services, I am curious what factors or criteria or questions my fellow council members that are not on services will have about this for us to inquire about and ruminate on and consider. Jeff didn't put up, but basically, I think that the total numbers weren't they? The original was, grand total, was it 3.7?
3.7 is what we have in revenues right now, yes.
Right.
Yep.
So about 3.7, we were talking about 400 in options, so about 4.1. Now we're saying we're going to need about 4.2 for the core package based on the bids, and maybe 650 for the options for a grand total of 4.85. So one way to think about it is the monies that we were sort of thinking about as options would need to go towards the core, and then we'd need to come up with more money for the options. So I'm really, my hope this evening is, I'm not sure process-wise how it goes, but hearing what concerns my fellow council members have for us to discharge our duties and services.
Councilmember Pauly.
That's a great question. I'm glad you're asking us ahead of time. I'll go back to our budget talks in the fall, and we spent a lot of time on how this number was going to work and break down. And I think the concern I've always had with our Parks estimating and where we're going to go with this is that we have a limited amount of money in the mitigation fund, and we don't have the strategic plan done yet. And so I don't want to see the mitigation fund used as a bank again, because we have not actually finished that strategic plan, and we don't know what we're not getting when we spend it down on other things. And so that's a big, heavy lift. I'm not really sure how you guys are going to deal with it, but that was a concern that was pretty thoroughly talked about at the budget session.
Councilmember Ramos.
Yeah, similar. So if I can kind of recap, the original request was about $1 million out of mitigation fund, and it looks like about $1 million more. So about $2 million additional than what I think we were originally set up. I'm trying to keep that in perspective, and I'm about right. And I can send you some more comments as I look at this a little more closer, you know, before you meet at Services and Safety. But you're talking some serious money here, and not knowing where that's coming from, and that's a big concern.
Any other questions at this time for the Chair of Services and Safety? So this was under regular business for referral, and so would you like to make a motion?
I think my council member to the right had a question first.
I'd like to refer Agenda Bill 7072 to the May 9th, 2017 Council Services and Safety Committee for review and recommendation, returning to the full council on May 15th, 2017.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Additional discussions or questions? Councilmember Ramos.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Jeff, and Bob and so forth for bringing this to our attention right now, to have some time to talk about this, to digest it, to have services work on it, so it's not hitting us cold, you know, 2 weeks from now. So I really appreciate the process that this happened, because this is a big decision, and the more time we have to look at it, the more touches we have, the better decision we're going to have. So thank you.
And Councilmember Batiste.
Jeff, I was just going to ask, can you send your presentation over so we can take a look at it before
Absolutely.
Services?
Yeah.
Thanks.
And all those in favor of referring the agenda bill to the, let me find it here, Agenda Bill 7072 to the May 9th Council Services and Safety Committee for review and recommendation, returning to the full council on May 15th, 2017, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving now to Agenda Bill 7219, Gilman's Loft 3 Trails Development Agreement. And I see Development Services Director Keith Niven at the podium. This is returning to the council after a motion, previous motion was to delay action on this to this council meeting. You have some introductory remarks, Keith?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Keith Niven, Economic Development and Development Services Director for the City of Issaquah. So as you covered in a quick summary, this agenda bill has been before the council for decision twice so far, and has been postponed twice, once for some additional information to be provided to the city council, and once because our council was a little shorthanded one evening. So there is an existing motion on the floor, and that may get amended tonight based on some of the information. So I thought I would do a quick presentation. You've heard from a number of interested businesses in the chamber who have talked about this particular agenda bill. I believe you also received an email today from the Cascade Bicycle Club. So I wanted to make sure that we recognize that. So the proposal is to execute a development agreement to allow a 4-story, 60,000 plus or minus square foot mixed-use project to move forward during the moratorium. The reasons why the applicant has asked for this development agreement is there's the opportunity for some cost savings while they are out there doing construction within Gilman. And they also are looking for some investment surety. Right now, they have an investor for the Gilman Lofts project. As you heard from Mr. Power earlier this evening, they also have funding to do a single-story retail building in this location. And so they're just wanting to move forward with one project or another. So they have asked to partner with the city in the construction of the 3 Trails signalized intersection of Gilman. As we've talked about previously, that signalized intersection will improve access for pedestrians and bicycles wanting to cross Gilman in this location. It's improved vehicular access from Juniper to Gilman, and it does not decrease access to other Northside businesses which might otherwise be impacted by a C-curb, which we talked about earlier. The project site is located on this map. It's basically Pagacha Restaurant is right here. The Automotive Center, as we heard from testimony this evening, it's located right here. This is Gilman, and this is the King County Trail right here. Juniper is right here. So summarizing traffic, with traffic signal, the overall intersection level of service is B currently, and then moves to D, which is the city standard in 2030. Although C-curbing will be installed, Northside Gilman properties will be able to access Gilman at the new traffic signal due to the fact that there's surplus right-of-way on the north side of Gilman. Pedestrian and bicycle crossing of Gilman is significantly improved, and without this signal, C-curbing will be installed pursuant to the current permit. So I'm not going to read all this unless you want me to, but in the agenda bill, there's a revision to the provisions for both urban design and architectural fit. This came out of the last council conversation. And if I were to read all this, what you would see is that the applicant has agreed to have their project be reviewed either by design guidelines that are prepared by the city's consultant that's working on Central Issaquah Plan, architectural fit, and urban design, or if those guidelines are not ready for review of a project, that they would actually submit their proposal to our consultant to provide a review as part of the DC process. So that's where I'm going to stop tonight, unless you all have questions. And I do have traffic folks to help me out if I need them, sitting in the back row.
So as a reminder, the motion on the floor, as moved by Council President Goodman and seconded by Council Member Pauly, was to approve resolution number 2017-03, approving the Gilman Lofts Three Trails Development Agreement, and direct the Finance Director to include $375,000 in a subsequent 2017 budget amendment, utilizing $75,000 from the mitigation fund and $300,000 from the general fund. That is the motion on the floor. Council President Goodman.
Thank you. So what you have up here for the urban design and the architectural fit, the revisions that are reflected in the development agreement that's in the packet tonight. Thank you very much.
It is.
The motion that's on the floor would encompass these changes?
It would not. So
would
there's
not.
an alternate motion if you see in the agenda bill. It's actually listed at the end of the update section. And if you would like, I can read it for you if you can't find it.
Found it.
Okay.
I found it in Fred's packet. I would move to amend resolution number 2017-03, approving the Gilman Lofts Three Trails Development Agreement by replacing Exhibit A to the resolution with the revised development agreement dated April 25th, 2017, Exhibit K.
Second?
Moved and seconded. There is an amendment on the floor. Discussion on the amendment. Councilmember Pauly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Keith, was there not actually one other change to the language having to do with the trail connection? Isn't there not a third one that we might want to highlight?
Yes, so we also, let me find that. So we included, so the way that the trail section reads right now in the revised Exhibit K, it says that design of the plaza will be, let's see, as part of the land use permit, the development and the city will, the developer and the city will work to provide an engaging edge for pedestrians and bicycles in the form of a plaza on the proposed site, which will allow the project to interface with the trail and will provide an attractive edge for the project. The design of the plaza will be consistent with and reviewed against the Plaza Standards, Section 13.5, that's out of the Central Issaquah Standards, as well as any design guidelines or standards, draft or final, prepared by the city's CIP, Central Issaquah Plan consultant, as part of the 2016-2017 development moratorium. So we also included looking at the plaza piece. So that would be incorporated into the urban design component that's up on the screen right now, but we specifically talked about the interface between, because it's an off-site improvement technically, working that specifically, yes.
Were there any other edits beside that, or those were the,
Those were the two in the last version.
Okay.
We also had included a piece on the bus stop, which is section 4.4. Yes, I think that's of significance. I think those were the only amendments.
Okay, and then a final question on budget, if that's okay. So this is asking for the council to approve an additional authorization of $300 and some thousand. Was that included in the 2017 budget, or is that a new ask?
It's a new ask.
And how would we know that we can actually afford to do that?
Our finance director's here. I would ask her if she's comfortable fielding that question.
Or Bob can do it.
Well, yeah,
Or
I'm
Bob,
happy to.
if
So
he is.
the next report will actually be from the finance director, and if you look at let's see, page 426 of your packet, they see the fund balance there, and the growth of that, and we've got, can you read that number? I can't read it, it's too small.
Oh, yeah, 17,088,958.
And then what's the cash balance number right there?
That's 6,116,186.
So there's about an $11 million difference between what the council policy is on fund balance and what we actually have to the positive. So there would be, we would suggest that the funds would come out of that ending fund balance for the year.
Is that a different cash fund balance than we estimated we were going to have? We were making decisions in December?
So
Are we in a healthier position, I guess?
we're in a healthier position. I'm sure the finance director, when she does report, maybe will address that.
Any additional questions or discussion on the amendment? Councilmember Ramos,
Go ahead.
followed by? Paul, go ahead.
No, I'm not going to do the amendment. I'll do something else.
Okay. Last time we were discussing this, there was conversations about the traffic study, whether or not an intersection was really justified or not. Now, I see some additional information, a letter dated just late in April from our consultants regarding, this is the one from TSI, where I'm going to quote from part of the letter. It says, the additional PM peak hour trips do not require the construction of a traffic signal or any additional traffic control measures beyond the already conditioned C curb. So I believe I understand the intent of this, but so I'll take a swing at that, and please correct me. But and I think my colleague, Councilmember Ramos, asked a very good question. why is the city considering any funding for this intersection, if indeed the development warranted an intersection a lighted intersection be constructed and installed due to the impacts, due to the development, then they should bear the cost of that. And so I'm not sure if it was put in the packet explicitly, but based upon this message and the date of it and how it followed our last one, I think this is the intent is that we have a professional opinion that even the Lofts proposal, which as it says here, will generate 19 more trips than the original proposal, which was already vested, which was the tire superstore, that because it doesn't generate an intersection, if we want an intersection and the developer is willing to build the intersection for the reasons that are covered within that you've already mentioned tonight, that this is the piece that says, yeah, if we want it, it makes sense that we pay for part of it because it's above and beyond what is actually required by the development. Could you respond to that?
Yes, Councilmember Winterstein, that's exactly what that is saying. And so what we believe is that the Lofts project does not trip all of the warrants to generate the requirement for a traffic light in this location. But because the applicant sees the benefit of having a traffic light, and because we also have in our adopted plans a traffic light in this location, it's an opportunity for a partnership for where the city could potentially get a $1.4 million asset for $375. That's I think what we're talking about.
And so I'm just wondering if we strayed a little bit. There is an amendment on the floor that we have not acted on, and it seems like the discussion right now would be on the motion itself. So I'm going to call for a vote on the amendment and then begin discussion. So all those in favor of approving the amendment to amend the resolution. Excuse me?
Well, I just wanted to, maybe one last call for council members who have questions or comments about the amendment, just to be clear, before we vote. No?
Not about the amendment.
Okay, just making sure.
Thank you.
Without repeating all of the words in the amendment, all those in favor of the amendment to the main motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that carries unanimously. Now discussion on the amended motion. Councilmember Martz.
I want to thank my fellow council members for deferring this. I was one of the 2 council members who was out sick 2 weeks ago, so thank you very much. As my fellow council members know, I'm very excited about this project. I feel it's well worth considering it, despite the moratorium that we have right now. This is the sort of living wage jobs that I have been focused on for 8 years. So I'm very excited. I'm excited that the administration came back at the last meeting with quite a bit of the information that my fellow council members had requested in regards to traffic and the role of the trail in regards to the project. So I continue to be excited and look forward to supporting this evening.
Councilmember Batiste.
So I would like to echo what Councilmember Martz just talked about. With this particular project, I very much liked the project in the beginning. I think that having the office space and retail is something that's very needed in the central Issaquah core. I sat on Land and Shore through the committee meetings, and it became a difficult decision for a couple different reasons. One was looking at approving a development agreement during the moratorium, and we talked a lot about the community benefit and what the bar of the community benefit is. And so I really needed to focus in and try to look at that community benefit bar, and also the signalized intersection and the traffic flow, the impacts to Juniper and Gilman. I very much appreciate all the additional information that staff has brought forward in regard to the traffic flow, the level of service, the architectural fit and review, and all of this information has enabled me to be able to continue to support this project. I see the community benefit for a few different reasons. The trail connectivity, the pedestrian safety, the car safety, accessing Gilman from Juniper and Rainier, the traffic flow studies, and the focus on future level of service was really important to me. And the agreement now to use the architectural and urban design draft language was all very helpful. And again, I just wanted to reiterate that the decision tonight is not whether something will be built on this property, but what will be built on this property. So the single-story surface parking with the C curb, we've heard a lot of feedback from business owners about the impact, or much-needed office space that after 3 years on economic vitality, we've talked a lot about being able to supply that. I see that the fit within the central Issaquah plan and the signalization and all of the other reasons I've talked about, to me, it does meet the community bar.
Councilmember Ramos.
Yes, I'd like to say first to start that I support the concept of this project and where we're heading with it and the signal and so forth. I still have a concern from the last council meeting, and I don't know as I've would able to convince anybody otherwise, but I think my concerns are valid. And in this process, I do feel that the Issaquah is paying maybe more than we should be. If you look at, I think we're going to confuse apples and oranges a little bit. The original permit that required the C curb, and we can discuss whether C curb was a good decision or not, but it was made. Now, when we reopen the project because of change of conditions, then not only the developer gets to reopen the project, but the city gets to reopen the project and look at our requirements. And a C curb is something that is detrimental to the neighboring businesses. And I just don't believe that we should ever, as a city, require some mitigation for a new business that is detrimental to existing business. And that decision, I just don't agree with originally. But now, and we would have to live with it. But at this point, we have a chance to open that up and rediscuss that as well. In which case, if the C curb doesn't work, because it technically may work traffic-wise for this project to have the minimum safety requirement, it doesn't meet the whole city requirement, which is more than just a traffic engineer would look at, which says there's detriment to the people neighboring you for this requirement. So we may have to go to a higher one than maybe just a traffic count would do. So that's what bothers me, and it sounds like people are selling this because the developer's putting up $1 million, but we're doing this in a rush so they can save money on their installation because they're doing other work at the same time. Also, they're getting full credit for their mitigation fees on this. And so, again, there's a lot of things that, for me, the math doesn't add up, that I think we could have gotten a much better, the same project without the city having to put up as much money. And that's the only thing that concerns me about that. And because the decision is being made right now that we're going to form that partnership. Okay? Now, as the developer has changed his mind on what they're proposing right now from before, they haven't applied for that in reality. And they could change their mind again before they actually apply for something. It'd be a development, and we're already agreed to that partnership. We don't have the facts yet. Until they apply for the permit and go through a new SEPA process, and that process on what they're doing, we don't know what the requirements would be. So we're making an agreement now to partner in something that maybe it'd be a good thing, and this is the perfect thing, but maybe we would have to pay less or none at all. And that's the thing that bothers me. It's a decision before all the facts are in. And so I'm kind of in a quandary because I don't want the C curb. I want this to keep going, but I still don't think we got the best deal out of this, and I think there's some city money that could have been spent otherwise. And we have a lot of other traffic things to spend things on. So that's what worries me about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Lou?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I'm going to dovetail on both the previous two council members' talking points because they're great, and I have them on my list as well, but I take it from a slightly different angle. This was brutal project to have to look at. Brutal for the applicant and really difficult for Land and Shore. This project was already being discussed before we did the moratorium. The moratorium just threw a monkey wrench in, really unfortunate, and council was considerate of some additional exceptions in November, but this project still was going to go through as a proposed development agreement, and that made it really tough. So I credit the applicant a lot for being patient with us as we had to work our way through it. The positives were pretty easy to see. Realigning the trail, getting vertical mixed-use opportunity, which was actually what Councilmember Martz was talking about as well, and getting some sort of feature at the trailhead, that all looked fantastic. But the concerns that I struggled with as we saw this so many times was, are we going to get good architectural design? Are we going to get good urban design? Are we counting on King County to help us create the feature, or can we create a nice feature at the trailhead anyway? Those are concerns that the council considered when we put the moratorium in place, and this is the 25th project to come through in Central Issaquah. It's the 25th project to come through the door, and at some point, if urban design and architectural review is an issue, we got to solve it. And so the accommodations that the applicant made today in accepting the proposed language change, that's huge to me. I mean, I was almost as concerned about that as I was about understanding how the intersection itself would work. So those I can put to the side. I think my biggest issue about how the intersection function goes along along Councilmember Ramos's line is that the C curbing that was previously approved, nobody liked it. Nobody likes C curbing. We don't like C curbing. The businesses next door don't like C curbing, but that's what we were stuck with. And so that felt like a bit of a difficult situation we couldn't resolve unless we jump right to the development agreement. But I credit the city and the applicant for bringing back a lot of additional information. So thank you, Councilmember Martz, for asking for that. I think this is going to help the intersection improve. The quandary I had was that, and Mr. Niven said that we were always going to have a light there. I'm not sure I'm on that page. I think one of the issues was we don't have a corridor study. We don't have a corridor plan for this. We're actually collecting our survey data now. We haven't even sat down and decided what the future Gilman Boulevard may or may not look like. We haven't talked to our community about it. But a light went in at 7th and Gilman and caused an uproar for businesses. A C curb was going to go at Juniper and Gilman and caused another uproar for businesses. So it seems like we keep having hiccups all along the way because we don't know what we want that corridor to look like. I struggled with that. I am mostly convinced that the light is the right option, but we still haven't got our study. And so we as a council have to focus on, we've got to get something figured out, what we're doing. Every time we do something on that road, somebody's angry or somebody's upset or their business is impacted, and that's not fair. So tonight, I'm in favor of it, but this took an enormous lift to get over the finish line. And so I thank the staff and I thank the applicant, and I think this is going to be great, and so I'm in support of it.
Councilmember Barber.
Well, I think most everything has been said, but I have to agree with some of it. I mean, the trail connection, I think, is going to be a marvelous piece to finally connect it, and then all the way down around Lake Sammamish. So those trail improvements. The signal, I'm in absolute favor of. It's been one of those, I sat there for a very long time today waiting to get out and finally took the right and went around. Anyway, I think signalization there is going to be extremely important and very helpful to the flow of what's going on in that road. Urban design, let's see. The only thing that I'm really having some trouble with is this C curb, and I have a great deal of difficulty seeing how it's going to flow traffic and how it's going to work, and that is my big piece that I'm very concerned with. And maybe I just need to sit down and talk with somebody more in regards to how this is going to make traffic work and flow through there. So overall, I think it's been looked at and studied considerably, and I'll be voting for it.
Additional Comments or discussion? Councilmember Winterstein.
Yeah, it has been a fascinating process, and I wasn't on Land and Shore when this went through there, but when it first hit the council and objections were raised about unknown impact of a lighted intersection, about doing something during the time of the moratorium that technically met the spirit with doing a development agreement, but the issues raised about urban and design and integration with the trail. I think, so through this process, I agree with what was said earlier. I was actually surprised in a pleased way when I saw that proposed language. I was worried, last time we met, it talked about the whatever status of urban design existed at the moment. But this now goes a step further and says, if it's not complete enough, then at their own cost, the developer will hire the consultant. And the spirit of that is very much appreciated. So I think our, even during this moratorium, our concerns about, structured parking or parking in general, urban design, and other elements, have been addressed with what's been put together here. Regarding Gilman Boulevard, yes, we're going to study that, but I'm fairly confident that Gilman Boulevard will remain 2 lanes in both directions for a long period of time. And and I think that's what this intersection design is based upon as well. And so I think for the full length, there'll be some adjustments, but I think because of the benefit of the lighted intersection, improving the movements for all users at Juniper, especially for non-motorized, for pedestrian and cycle users, or anybody users of that trail. I think for those benefits, then that this intersection, is worth it. And still, we're going to go through the full Gilman study. So in balance, I support going forward with this development agreement. But I'm going to close with one comment. And I thank Councilmember Ramos for continuing to drill on this. And I think this is for taking up afterwards. How can we approve improvements, mitigation improvements that have such a detrimental impact on nearby businesses? We absolutely have to take another look at take a close look at how we come to those determinations. Now, maybe, you're shaking your head, you understand, good. Maybe there's something I don't know how we do this, but if a nearby business owner never comes in front of this council again and says, that mitigation is going to hurt me, if that never happens again, then that would be fantastic. But clearly, and we've had visits from the nearby business owners multiple times, 3 times, as we've addressed this. And so the concerns are widely shared among the business owners. And so for us to put the business owners and put the whole city in that position, let's take another look how we make those determinations. And I hope we never find ourselves in this position again.
Council President Goodman.
Thank you. I'm supportive as well. I want to thank the applicant for your patience during this process. This has been very long, very frustrating. And I guess the only thing that I would not agree with is that, pardon me, Councilmember Ramos, is that it's rushed. This has not been rushed for those of us who've been looking at this for many, many months. And I understand that was said in the spirit of having some of your questions needing to be answered. I totally understand that. So this has been in the city's plans. This 3 Trails crossing has been on the city's plans, TIP, maybe non-motorized TIP, it says in the agenda bill, for many, many years. And as recently as 2014, the TIP said that the targeted outcome was to put the project on hold to wait to coordinate with development adjacent to the project. It seems like we have come to that point right now. And there's been a lot of talk about the benefit. When I look at a project that is estimated to cost in our plans $1.455 million, and we have we have the maximum out-of-pocket expense for the city is $375,000. And a project that the applicant has now graciously, and in response to questions raised by Councilmember Polly in the last few weeks, agreed to the additional language in the development agreement. We have a project that is, from what I can tell, pretty consistent with the Central Issaquah plan. And so with that concern behind me and other council members, I don't know how there could be, I don't know how $1 million contribution to a project that's been on our TIP for many, many years is not a very significant public benefit. I know there have been concerns raised about development agreements, and there's been comments made that the development agreements are expressly excluded according to the moratorium. As one of the primary architects of the moratorium, I can tell you the language, I can tell you that the intent was not to encourage additional development agreements. So I didn't, and I don't look at this as a development agreement, this is a cost-sharing agreement. So I think it's a little bit unfortunate that it got termed that, because I don't think it's accurate. But I agree with I agree with all the comments tonight, and I thank you for the applicant for hanging with us, and I thank staff for working hard and asking all of our answering all of our questions. That every meeting we had additional questions. So anyway, I'm supportive.
Any additional comments or questions or discussion before you vote on the amended motion? Seeing none, then, all those in favor of approving Resolution 2017-03 as amended, approving the Gilman Lofts Three Trails Development Agreement and directing the Finance Director to include $375,000 in a subsequent 2017 budget amendment, utilizing $75,000 from the mitigation fund and $300,000 from the general fund, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That carries unanimously. Moving now to Agenda Bill 7415. This is the last item under regular business. Is there a need for a break?
A Ramos?
Huh?
Ramos break?
There's two more items.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. We've got a contract we want to award, don't we? Maybe they won't go as long as this one. Okay, moving now to Agenda Bill 7376, South Cove Pressure Reducing Valve Project. This is coming back from the Infrastructure Committee, chaired by Councilmember Ramos. And Sheldon, do you have a short presentation?
Not a PowerPoint, but I can verbally talk to the agenda bill and where we are. And
Okay, great. Sheldon
Councilmember
Mann,
Ramos can
Director
fill up
of
the gaps.
All right.
Public
We'll tag
Works,
team.
Engineering.
All right. So this agenda bill was referred from a previous council meeting to the CIC meeting last month. And it was referred specifically because there was a request for additional funds to be authorized in the budget to allow the project to move forward under construction. The project itself is the construction of a pressure-reducing valve station in the South Cove Greenwood Point area to help actually sustain pressures at a higher level, ironically pressure reducing, but yet it's actually going to sustain higher pressures through some specialized control methods and things like that, and mechanical devices that are not typical to a PRV. That was one of the major reasons for the increase in costs that was not anticipated. Following review at CIC, the committee recommended to award the contract, but wanted this on regular business just to highlight that, yes, there's a budget increase in this, but yet it's still warranted, and the recommendation is to authorize and award the contract to Westerland Construction. And with that, I'll let Mr. Ramos talk.
Councilmember Ramos.
And I'll move now for have further discussion. I move to award the construction contract to Westerland Construction in the amount of $398,596.42 and direct the finance director to include $182,000 in subsequent 2017 budget amendment utilizing funds from the Water Enterprise Fund.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Councilmember Ramos.
I have a little more information to share, clarify it a little bit. So this is a project as we took over the water system in South Cove from Bellevue, and it's one of the last ones, I think, jointly that we're working on. And so the agreement with Bellevue was to share 50-50 in the cost of this pressure-reducing system, except for additional things we may have to put on it. So, and that there are some of those things we have to put on it, as Sheldon mentioned. So the dollar-wise, it's a little confusing because the motion is for $182,000. It's really for $112,000 of new funding. $70,000 of that is last year's funding carried over and reauthorized. Okay, so that's, you know, really an additional 112, not an additional 182. When the project's done, Bellevue will send us back $212,000 for their share of the project. So we're each paying $212,000, each city is, and then we're paying the additional for the telemetry and additional things that we need. So that's the 112 there. So kind of to get that all in perspective, keeping it all in line on how that works. And then this is needed for the water system in South Cove to really work properly. There's some places down there that don't have pressure and very inconsistent stuff, and this should take care of all those problems, so we should have a good, high-quality water system once this is in, and then we're taking over, and when we finish the meters, we'll be up and ready to go. So that's my little uptake on that.
Additional questions or discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor of awarding the construction contract to Westerland Construction as described in the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that carries unanimously. Now for our final item under regular business, 2016 year-end financial report. Finance Director Jen Olson, who is teeing that up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I was looking for the actual 2016 financial report in the presentations, and it is not in the folder, so.
I believe.
It is in the
part
council
of the
packet.
agenda bill.
That's correct.
As Appendix A, 2016 year-end budget versus actual financial report. And
All right, thank you. I'm going to get started with, I'll do a brief presentation and then be happy to answer any questions. The 2016 year-end financial report has been prepared, and this is a snapshot of revenues and expenditures for the general fund and the utility funds for the year-end December 31st, 2016. Just a reminder to the council that this is a snapshot of the financial performance of these operating funds, and this essentially is subject to the annual audit of our financial statement. So for 2016, just some highlights with regards to how the budget versus actual and how we performed. So with regards to the general fund, we ended at the end of 2016 with pretty robust fund reserves. Tax revenues were strong in 2016. The moratorium affected some of the development revenue line items. General fund expenditures came in below the estimated budget targets, and the utility operating revenues, the utility funds are very strong. So for the general fund, we have a strong showing of revenue sources, and that is primarily in the taxes realm. We have a very strong collection rate, and that is something from a performance metrics to always be consider that our tax collection rate is about 98%, and so that is considered positive. The general fund, as I just briefly went over with regards to being robust, ended significantly higher, almost $2 million over the last year, or the 2015 ending fund balance. And so this is also positive. And so as compared to the City Council's financial policy, the maximum reserve balance is 15%. The 2016 ending fund balance ended at approximately 40%, and this is quite significant. In the financial report, you'll see some historical information with regards to the change in fund balance. You'll see where we have been from 2009 up until the end of 2016. So a very, very strong general fund balance. And just as a reminder for fund balance, it is a measure of liquidity. It is there to provide for unforeseen events, as well as to accommodate for cash flow throughout the year as we receive in revenues that are not necessarily consistent on a month-to-month basis. Some of our large tax collections come at a couple times per year, and so that's why when we talk about fund balance being used for cash flow activities, that is part of financial policy and why it's kept there. In this new report format, and it is somewhat new from what you've been seeing, we've provided a summary information about the general fund, the major categories of revenue, those being taxes, license and permits, intergovernmental revenue, charges for services, fines and fees, and then of course some miscellaneous revenue. So about 97% of the amended revenue budget was achieved for 2016.
Jen, excuse me, question, comment?
Yes?
If you're changing your screen, we can't see it, but.
Well, I was just, I didn't want to read the financial report, but I certainly can.
So you the last comment you made, I was looking at that. As you go down to this next page, it does show that actual revenues came in at about 97%.
Yes.
Now, but so that, I'm a little bit confused, because I thought some of your open comments were about how strong and how well we did on the tax collection, or just the overall revenue. But now this final report shows that our collections, our total revenues were lower. So
actually,
did I misunderstand your comment?
Tax collections here, total tax collections were 99% of the total budget. So the revenue budget of $28.8 million, we collected 99% of that. And so that's what I refer to as being a very strong collection rate. Overall general fund revenues came in at 97%. So that's a combination of all taxes, of all license and permits, intergovernmental revenues, charges for services, miscellaneous revenues. So at the bottom of the summary of general fund revenues, that's where I talk about 97% of total general fund revenues. The taxes are just one portion of those general fund revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. On the expenditure side of things for the general fund, the general fund budget came in under budget at 92% of the $44.359 million of authorized spending for 2016. So what this means is that obviously with our revenues coming in at a stronger rate, we did not spend as much of the authorized general fund budget. That was due to a number of various items throughout the year. And so you can see here a snapshot of how the general fund, ending fund balance, where we had a budgeted decrease in ending fund balance, but we actually ended with almost $2 million over revenues over expenditures. In this particular new reporting format, quarterly reporting format, there are some general fund department expenditures. This is to give the council an idea of generally those general fund departments. Keep in mind, though, the general fund in its entirety is where the budget is set. And so oftentimes there are nuances to different departments. Some departments, for various reasons, don't utilize all of the spending authority, primarily because of perhaps vacancies or other projects that are just not completed in that current budget year. And so that is what was provided for the council to see, with some explanations of variance in the budget expended. But again, the general fund came in well under the authorized total fund budget. Utility funds then, as a part of this report, are very strong, as I indicated. This is a snapshot of those water, sewer, and stormwater funds. In this particular snapshot version, what you're going to see is the utility enterprise revenue and expenditures combined, and this includes the capital outlay. And just as a side note, to remember that enterprise funds, while we track those separately with capital funds, there is a proposal for those to be combined. We never report on them separately, and so it's important to think of those as business type entities, and so that's why they're shown here, and they will continue to be shown because it essentially is important to look at those enterprise funds as one going concern if you're in the private sector. But the water, sewer, and stormwater funds had all positive increases in ending fund balance, ended strong. Charges for services, so those are the rates that our customers pay. Those also came in at or exceeded those revenue targets, which is very positive. On the expenditure side, we can look at those in a couple of different ways. For utility funds, our major category of expenditure is maintenance and operations. You can see about 71% of our utility funds is spent that way. We spend about 25% on capital outlay and 3% on debt service. So we do have, when it comes to debt obligation, we have very low debt service for our utility funds. Another way to look at the utility funds is by type. And so certainly our largest type of expenses are those intergovernmental charges, charges for services, and we have 21% of our utility funds spent on personnel. There's also some various detailed information about the utility funds in the financial report. Again, I won't read a financial report because we want to make sure that we all stay awake for the rest of the meeting. So I'll be happy to answer any questions of the council about the 2016 year-end financial report.
Mary Lou?
More of just a comment, Jen, and that is that I really like the format, and maybe I just haven't seen enough of these, and this is the format we always use, but I found this very understandable, and I like the key words and the key messages on the front page. I found that very helpful, so it was quite easy to read. Thank you.
Additional questions? Paul?
Would share again, similar, my gratitude for just putting together here at the beginning of May a year-end kind of summary of last year. It is more pleasant to look at. Nice use of colors. Thank you. And I do appreciate you summarizing it, giving this information. There's some stories in this data. And I think, when it comes to expenditures, one of the things I pulled out from your many comments were, and because salary and benefits is so, for most departments, such a significant percentage of the overall expend, especially those funded by the general fund, I mean, the story is basically we didn't operate, well, one of the main stories is we didn't operate at a staffing level that we had planned for.
No.
Is that one of the major stories so that these final numbers tell?
It is one of the major stories. We had a fair amount of vacancies.
And I'd love to have some follow-on conversation about how we're, because, we plan, you do a work plan. I don't want to get too much into the details, but you do a work plan based upon what you think you can get done. And if you can't, put your team together, your objectives are, could be compromised. So how are we doing? How are we doing recovering? Because I know we budgeted for this headcount in 2017. Are we catching up?
We've got quite a few hiring actions, requisitions for new employees. We are recruiting a number. We're down a little bit. Keith left. He's down.
Keith left?
Yeah.
Building.
He left the building.
The city.
For police, it's been a little bit of a struggle, but we're up there, and I recently authorized an overhire for a projected vacancy coming up this summer, so we're trying to get a hold on that. It has, you're right, you're spot on. It has been a little bit of a struggle responding to things that have come up, I'm really proud of what our folks have been able to do in light of those shortages, and hopefully it's going to be better. We've got the right team in place at the upper level. We've got a number of vacancies below the manager level. We were short a number of managers for a while this past year, which created some problems for us. But now all of our manager positions are filled, and now we're trying to flesh out the rest of the organization below that. Bill?
You had your hand up first.
Nope, I've already spoken once. You go first.
Again, thank you. It is very easy to follow, and I appreciate that. A comment to your comment, Paul. This was one of my questions when we put the budget together in 2016. Is that by default, by decision, we budget for 100%. No vacancy. Everything's filled all year round in every position, and we know with this many employees, there's no way that's going to happen. So it's not going to happen, right? People are going to leave, people are going to move around. So we're always going to be less than what we budget in far as personnel-wise. It seems like to me, it's just by that design. And as of something I've definitely brought up in, when we budgeted that. So there's just going to be a normal vacancy rate anywhere that you're going to have when you have this many people working for you. And all you can do is, appreciate you guys trying to fill them as fast as you can, because we want to get the work done. We want the people in there, we want to get the work done, so we want good staff to do that. So, but that's always going to happen.
Mary Lou?
I'm sure just a clarification, Mr. Mayor. I believe I had emailed Jen some questions today on the development fees and charges as well, trying to get a handle on what the bump is going to look like and when it's going to occur for the moratorium. But my understanding is this will now go to the new ad hoc financial sustainability committee, allowing the deep dive. I know it's a terrible name. Allowing the deep dive, and I think the point that Councilmember Winterstein brought up about the stories in here, that's where I think we'll get our chance, Tuck it. And I'm not going to repeat the name of the committee because it's horrible. It's horrible.
You added a few adjectives, but you...
Did I add more? Did I make it even longer? Sorry.
There's no questions or discussion? Thanks for those positive comments. Jen and her finance team have done an awful lot of work in a relatively short period of time to correct and to improve our processes in our finance department. And they work very, very hard, and it's coming together. So we are lucky to have Jen with us as our finance director.
Yep.
Okay, moving now to good of the order. Mary Lou.
Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of the Chamber of Commerce Community Awards Banquet that's hosted by the Chamber on May 16th at 5:30. I think, Mr. Mayor, Hilton Garden Inn, is that the location?
That's correct. Paul?
One comment, Mr. Mayor, during your mayor's comments, you made one comment that I think maybe caught some people by surprise, and I just want to clarify, in case anybody's still listening. I don't think SR 900 intersects Maple Valley Highway, and I think you meant to say May Valley Road.
Oh, May Valley Road.
Yeah, you
Thank you very, very much.
So
Maybe some phone calls.
I was thinking that was going to be one large roundabout.
Really?
Thank you for
But
pointing
that is
out
what
my
you meant.
error.
You meant May Valley
I
Road.
meant May Valley Road.
Thank you.
Not what I said earlier, but that's what I meant.
Well, everybody went like, what?
What?
Didn't make much sense. Thank you. Anything else under good of the order? There's no executive session, and with that, we are adjourned.